So I have a question, like some people pretend to be very good for a long time, but then they show their true colors. What makes it happen? Why do they change? Why do people change so easily? Like somebody will make fake promises to you that they love you and all that. It will carry for years, like 1, 2 years or 5 years, whatever. And then they show their true colors. They become a person who's a cheater, a manipulator, and they might be using you financially, whatever. Why does that happen? Why do people make fake promises, and how are they able to hide their true colors?
Well, again, I would be looking at what changes have happened in their life in that time. If it's connected to a marriage, then did that person change their name and thus change their vibration and become somebody different? Did they move during that time? And therefore, they're working under maybe influences like before. Maybe they had favorable influences where they were living.
No, I'm asking that suppose they were in unfavorable situations before and they moved to the favorable situation and then they changed.
And then they change after they move into the favorable. So this then, again, with, I'd have to really look at that person's energy to understand it. But just as I was mentioning with you, a lot of times energy patterns are going to have two sides to them. They're going to have the divine side to them, and they're going to have the materialistic side to them. And so if that person, for example, is in the distortions of their energy, they might have some material wealth or things coming through, but somewhere in their energy patterns, they may still be those people who use other people. They may still be working in the distortions of their pattern, and because they're chasing the materialism instead of something else. And this is one of the things, for example, with our pattern, because while we are carrying that pattern, we can see it come out in other people around us as well. So, we're almost like that needle point, that acupuncture point in somebody. And so, when they're around us for a certain period of time, we're going to find out whether they're really in spirit or whether they're really in materialism, because our energy is going to bring that choice out too in them to a certain extent. And so, yeah, there can be a variety of reasons, but it can be that, I always say really hard times and really good times are the best way to know who somebody really is. And yes, it's very easy to fall for them, and people can present great images for a while. And that's why sometimes it's really great to kind of test the waters and say, well, how do they feel if we don't spend any money at all on a date, for example, and we do something that's totally free and we just kind of hang in that space for a while? Are they really okay with that? Or are they, oh, I wish that we had this really fancy restaurant? Or are they saying, I wish we could go take a vacation in this place that's $300 a night or $500 a night in this luxury resort? Again, it's like, where's their focus? And then, other times seeing, okay, maybe you do something really super nice one time and you do something that's more extravagant and more expensive, right? And then you see, are they lost in that? Are they just like starstruck in that space? Or are they sitting there going, you know what? This is really, really nice, but what would have been really cool is maybe we could have done something that was $100 a night instead of $300, and then we could have taken the other $200 and gone and just paid it forward and gifted it out to people that needed it. So this mindset becomes very, very different, and that's where you can kind of, I think, test the waters in some of those things. If they don't feel any value or purpose or have any exchange in the relationship, then you end up in this dynamic, and then it ends up depleting the person that is giving everything. And again, testing the waters a little at a time with people, because can they truly be grateful for something? Or are they always grateful when they get it and when they don't get it? So that they're not taking it for granted, not assuming that you're always going to do that.
Nichols George is a multidimensional powerhouse and energy code interpreter, specializing in energy healing, chakra alignment, dream interpretation, and intuitive wisdom. A translator of the unseen, she helps uncover the hidden patterns shaping your life and guides you through deep, holistic transformation. And if you are an author ready to self publish or share your voice with the world, visit blazegoldburst.com, your portal to publishing, visibility, and global impact. Also, support this movement by diving into Lord's Ordinary Children by Gita Shripani and Reversed Order Existence by Blaze Goldburst.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. Thank
So
you
we
for
will,
having me on. I appreciate it.
I feel honored to have you too.
I love what you're doing. I love how much you put together. It seems like you're really young to be where you're at, but I love that. And you bring such a great energy. I was looking at a couple of your shows and you just bring such a great energy to them. And I love that.
Thank you so much. What is code interpretation and how is it different from astrology or numerology?
Yeah, this is a kind of unique work that I do, and it's actually based on the energy frequency. So, for example, astrology is based on the positioning of the planets and where they're located. And they also deal with some energy factors. And then the numerology is based on numbers and how different number patterns carry different energy vibrations. And to a certain extent, my work actually includes a whole variety of things. So it actually includes various pieces of astrology and numerology in it. It actually includes about 50 different modalities, practices, belief systems, all of that, tools and things like that get integrated into this work that I do. And with that, it's a component where I'm the energy currents themselves. So I don't really use a lot of those tools in the traditional way. Like I might take a look and say, okay, when is the new moon going to hit, or when is the full moon going to hit, or a meteorite shower coming in. At the same time, I'm not looking at it from an astrologer's point of view. I'm looking at it from the actual energy standpoint of it. So instead of just going by like when you study astrology, and I think those tools all have value. I'll make note of that. They all have value and things like that. But I feel like this kind of even extends it a little bit more, because when you learn those modalities, you're learning some basic things that everybody has put out there, as opposed to really bringing in some of your own pieces or the actual divine energetics. So when I'm looking at it, I'm not looking at it from an astrologer's point of view, for example, that says, well, as everybody born under a certain sign has the exact same traits. So when I look at it from the coding interpretation aspect, I'm actually looking at the individual, and it becomes almost as individualized as a person's DNA.
I'm very new to all this. So in simple terms, what would you say about code interpretation if someone is new to this and they want to learn from you, if they want to understand this theme, because it's even new for me also.
Well, it is very original work. So what I do is I'll actually work with a person's name and usually their birth date. And if they've had a legal name change, I'll work with that. But what I'm really have a gift for is understanding how different energy patterns interact and connect. So you can have, for example, an energy pattern that is based on unconditional love. Or, for example, recently we've had a lot of things that connect with unclear mind, communication difficulties. That's very active right now. And for one person, when they're interacting with that current, then they will get an experience that maybe takes them deeper into the spiritual area and deeper into divine connection. Whereas somebody else that comes in and works with that energy, it could actually pull them into lies. So this is where you kind of get into that dynamic of, You could have two great people, and if you put them together, it might not be a great thing because the way their energies match together end up creating more challenges or difficulties. Well, likewise, you could take two people that are maybe just a hot mess, and when you put them together, all of a sudden they just blossom and evolve and grow. So it's all very kind of customized, and that's why you can take, for example, a family living in a house. They will all have different experiences in that house. Now, if you were going by traditional modalities, right? Traditional modalities would say, well, the house has this energy or this property has that energy to it. And so everybody should be having the same experience. But when I look at coding interpretation from that angle, that's not going to be the case. You're going to get some people that maybe are having a great experience in that house and they're thriving and their success is going. And then you have other people where they're not doing so well. Maybe they start getting illnesses or things like that. So it interacts with each person a little bit differently.
So my next question is, how do energy codes shape a person's life and experiences?
I love this, and I'm glad you're asking this because a lot about working with coding interpretation, and I hope it's okay if I hold this up because this is what I put out every year. It's about 700 pages, and it's a daily guidebook for life on Earth. It's called the Code Journey, and this is all about working with foresight, and even like the personal year reports I do, and the life reports and things like that I do for people. It's about understanding yourself deeper. It's about understanding what you have to work with. It is about knowing not so much a predictive thing like some modalities are, but realizing and coming into acceptance, okay, this is what I have to work with. And so if I understand, for example, that a storm is coming in, then I know to have some supplies on hand, right? I know to have some backup batteries on hand. I know to have extra water on hand, whatever the case is. And this work that I do is much like that. It's not psyching you out saying, well, I'm a victim to whatever these energies are. It's like, here's the energies that are present today. So we have big transformation energy present on the day that we're doing this interview. Have some other things that connect our past and our present and our future and different things like that. And we also have confidence energy and things like that are soaring. So if I understand these are some of the basic patterns I have to work with, then I understand that also, okay, I need to really stay focused on making the breakthroughs. I need to really stay focused on that transmutation energy today. So if I get hit with a challenge, then I need to turn that challenge around and not just give up and walk away from everything. So that foresight becomes a very powerful tool to shaping and redirecting us into very favorable directions.
Do you consider it a gift that you have acquired?
I do consider this a gift. And that's part of why I call myself an interpreter, because I'm not deciding what the energies are going to be. I'm simply looking at them and going, okay, I've got this gift to see how they're going to connect and how they're going to relate to each other and how they're going to come up and present, themselves in the world. And it's kind of fun and exciting to see when things are playing out. But I also find that if I have that foresight, for example, it's really great. So if I know communications are going to be challenging and I'm going to go in and I'm going to have an important conversation with somebody, I'm going to make sure I'm doing a lot of follow-up, a lot of clarifying of things. And I think that you're really good at that. You're really good at follow-up and making sure people know what they need and what they're doing. And that's awesome. You need to have that as a podcaster, right? And that kind of separates you from other podcasters out there because not everybody does that. So knowing those energies are present, it actually can allow me to keep things in that positive flow. And I do. I feel like it's a gift that I have that just naturally flows through me. We all have gifts, right? We all have natural things we align to in different ways. And so this is mine.
I would like to know more about your journey, how it started, how did you acquire this and everything? Because I'm very curious, I'm new to this subject. So Also, the audience
Well,
will like to understand this because we are not aware of these terms at all. We are only
okay.
more used to Vedic astrology, numerology, and such things. But this is
Yeah.
something different.
This is definitely a little bit different, even though it can overlap. And I'll see what I can do to semi-condense this down because it
How
can
it
be kind of a
started.
little bit long story, and it can be a little bit out there for some people. And I understand that, and I just encourage people to stay focused on what the work is offering, whether they agree with what I've been through or not. I'm cool with that. But this journey actually started, for those that don't know, and I don't know how much you know about walk-ins and what they are. And that's actually a soul that has stepped in for another soul. And that's what I have done. I stepped in for another soul. So there was actually another soul that started in my body. And she was the one that started this work that I'm here to follow up on and to see through. And she's actually part of my soul team in a way. We work together in other dimensions, other areas, and she came and incarnated into this life. And there was a point in her life a while back where things were very, very challenging for her. Not that she hadn't been through challenges all of her life, because she had. But even when she was young, she drew to a lot of tools like astrology and numerology. And she was always fascinated with, how do people know what's going to happen? Not from this, I got to be God aspect, but more, I want to understand that. And like a lot of people who are young, she also delved into magic and different arts in that realm as well, because she wanted to feel that, that power. She wanted to feel the power from within her. And she was always very intrigued by herbalism and studying those things. So her journeys led her to study all of these different things. And then at a certain point in life, when she was hitting these really big challenges and she was faced, do I need to stay with my family? Do I need to go, what do I need to do? Her father had already passed on. She knew her mom didn't probably have a lot of time left and all of that. So she was out praying on a creek. And that led her to meet a cat out of nowhere, which she rescued from going over a waterfall. And that cat was another part of our soul team, which was her soul love connection. And she ended up rescuing the cat. They gave it like almost no chance of surviving. She goes, I know this will survive. And there's conversation. I talk about that in my book, in the first part of my book, in the introduction. And they ended up basically traveling for 11 months around the United States. She was doing work in compassion at that time. She had a couple of books that she put out in compassion. And then about 11 months later, she found out the cat was actually much older than she realized. It was about 13 years old, had had a pretty hard life, and it did end up passing. And it was through the passing of that cat, which she was blessed all the way through the journey of traveling and meeting people all over, that this cat literally had standing reservations in restaurants and things like that. And so in that grief process, she came around and she started doing the reflection, and she started connecting all of these pieces. She had already started to open some of this work up, and the whole journey, the cat was reminding her of this code energy, which is really our language as magi. And so we're here to uphold truth and wisdom and let that be available to people so that they can work with it and have that to help them in making wise choices on this planet. So anyways, as time went on, she started this workup, and there came a point where it was very dangerous for her to be in body. And I want to make it clear that you don't get to just leave your body because you don't like what is happening in the world. And I had come in and I actually shared body for a while with her. And then through that process, eventually she left and she went on, and I stayed in the body. So she is back with the cat, well, her soul mate, so to say, And they're all doing well, and they still support me from where they're at, and I carry on this work now. So, she really felt like one of the most valuable tools for her in all of her journey was resource books, where you could go in and you could look up and see the basics of some, whether that was for herbalism or whatever it is. And so when she got ready to design this work, that's the way anybody could pick it up. They could combine it with any other modalities that they're using and go from there. So it's really kind of a way for me, on one hand. And so that's kind of where the journey has been. And now 2025 is the 8th year this book has been out. I'm in the process of writing 2026 right now, and that will be getting released in mid-August. So it's a very tense time, and now I continue to journey. I spent about 3 years traveling the US with the work, and now I am kind of more based here in the Northeast part of the United States and doing some things more locally because my body's not holding up as well to the big traveling right now. So I have to just lay low a little bit and do the pieces I can. So it's been a lot of challenges. It's been facing a lot of hard pieces along the way, which have included health challenges. It's included weather challenges, like having to live out of a vehicle in minus 30, minus 40 degree temperatures. A lot of these challenges just pushed me to keep growing and pushed her to keep growing along the way. And so in that process, it just has kept unfolding this work over and over again. So it's out there and it's available now. And that's just the whole journey from the time she rescued that cat from going over the waterfall has led up to this, but then that all got integrated in with all the studies she'd already done. So she studied, like I said, many different things. She just loved absorbing belief systems and practices and tools and esoteric systems and a whole variety of things. So she had everything from a church background to, a magical background.
How does it feel when your body is inhabited by two souls?
It's not something that happens very often. Again, that's not always something that a walk-in has the gift to do, because a lot of times when they're coming in, if they do come into a body, it is because they have, that body's been going through an accident or a major trauma or something like that. And that's when that switch happens. So, it can be a little bit different for each person in there, but I felt really blessed to have that time. I had about 2 months do that sharing, and I felt really blessed because I just felt like I had a friend there to a certain extent, and it took some time to reorient once she actually left. I loved being able to share that body time with her for that 2 months. It was like having a friend there. It was like I got a chance to see firsthand and get her input through the human body about people, about situations. So it gave me a real chance to orientate. Now I've been on what do I want to say, on call, overwatching things ever since she incarnated, because we knew there was that possibility in our team. We knew that was something that could happen. And so in that process, I've been kind of watching all through her life, which is part of why I know a lot of what I know, because I've been there, just not in the body through most of it. And so when I came in, it just really gave me the chance to absorb it through the physical senses. And then when she left, it was a little bit almost lonely. It's like when you live in a house full of people and then they're not there anymore and you're the only one left living there. It takes time to adjust and adapt.
Maybe you had a soul contract with her.
Well, again, she was part of my team. We really didn't want her to come in, but we respected her choice to do so. And we knew it was a dangerous time in the world. We knew that the circumstances were dangerous. And so there was a certain amount of contract because, of course, when you're born into the body, especially through the birth process, then you're coming in and it's, you forget a lot of who you are because you're thrust into this situation, and then you start having the raising from your parents, and then you get societal programming and friend programming, and you get all these things, and you're just absorbed in the physical world. Even if you do have some insight, like she always had a little piece of connection, but maybe didn't understand it fully. And that's part of the danger when you incarnate into like a third dimensional world. So I had kind of an understanding that, okay, if things hit a certain point, and that's where we were just watching them and observing a lot along the way in my team, that, if need be, we could do it. And we thought at one point we could just send, somebody, another soul. It wouldn't have to be one of us necessarily to come in. But when she started this workup and she started unfolding it, and it was like, no, we have to have somebody of the team come in for this because it's just not going to work to send whatever soul through. So that's when I knew for a while, especially once the cat's name was Orly, especially once Orly was in her life. I was like on super high alert, like you may have to go anytime type of alert. Like that on call, that on call type of thing, like a doctor on emergency call or something, And so it was, through that I stayed on high alert, and I knew by that point I was coming in, and just had her, make some little adaptations to make it easier for me to be in body along the way. And she was really unfolding who she was, where she came from, what she was about. And I think that was, I think she was ready to go as well by the time she left. So I've now been in body since the fall of 2018, fully on my own. And here I am, just to continue this work.
Do you think you will meet her again?
Do I think I would? No. No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot more benefit that I can do not being in a body. There's a lot more impact that I can have for people. And I'm working with so many different groupings, planetary groupings, starseed groupings, things like that, that we are plenty busy. This was just kind of a rare situation to have to step in. We were hoping it wasn't going to be needed, but it was.
I'm getting to learn a lot from you.
I have a vast background, and I'm open to whatever somebody wants to ask me. Because it does stir a lot of questions. It's not something that people get to talk about normally, and it's not something that they hear a lot about. And so it is a different avenue for people. And, I think when people were at a point, when, humans were at a point that they weren't living very long, like you can even go back 30 or 40 years and you were doing good if you made it to 70. Well, now it's like 70 is almost nothing, right? And a lot of people are living well into their 80s and their 90s. And in some countries, a lot of people will even reach hundreds. And more and more with the intensity of the world, I think we could see more walk-ins coming through. But we've got a couple of years to go on some of that. It just depends on the direction that humanity chooses, really. And that's always an important part. It's just like the work I do. I can give you all the ingredients. I can tell you what's present, and it's up to you whether you want to work with that or not, or how you want to work with it.
Do you remember your past life?
I do remember a lot. I have not incarnated very many times personally. The soul before me did. She had been through many incarnations, and she just kind of loved that adventure, and she was working through some stuff, and has lived in many different cultures, many different types of lifestyles. And, she had past lives that connected to like Egyptian times. She had past lives that connected in with presence to Atlantis times, Lemurian times, to the to East Asian cultures that she had. She had more like farming community past lives in France and that type of a region there. And she had Celtic past lives, so she had a variety of different times that she chose to come in, but they were not oftentimes as dangerous as, you know, some of the things that we're living through. You know, in some ways we sit back in this comfort these days and we don't think about our life being that dangerous. And in other ways, we're dealing with an awful lot more than what has been dealt with in past times.
So my next question is, can someone's energy pattern change over time, or is it set at birth?
I love this too, because I actually get asked this a lot. So it's a great question. We have actually two components. It's not one or the other so much. If we do, for example, a name change, and then shift some of our energy, and we will take on the energy of that name change. So that will be very good for us. And sometimes that can help soften the energy that we're born into, and sometimes that can make things more difficult. So you think, like here in America, and I know it's not this way in every country, but here in America, one of the things women do is when they get married, they oftentimes will take on the man's last name. And so their energy influence changes. So when you hear people say, well, she's not the same person I married. Well, no, she's not the same person, because her energy vibration has a different dynamic to it. So she still has some of the person she was before marriage, but then she also has this new energy and dynamic that she's working with. And the longer we're in one energy pattern, then the more solidified, or the more prevalent that energy pattern becomes. So the more strong it is in our life. And then the other flexible pieces that we have, for example, are the people that we're with and how our energy is connecting with them, family connections, where we live, and oftentimes where we work, because a lot of people spend 40 hours or more a week at work. And so whatever the address is that they're working from, the company name perhaps, and then the address that they live at, because obviously they're spending at least 40 hours a week at home, usually, because they're sleeping or whatever there. So all of these things start to influence us. So if we pick up and move, we may bring out a different side of us. So where one side of us was challenged in one location, we might be able to move and then not have some of those challenges to deal with, and actually be able to bring out a more favorable side of our own energy patterns as a result of that. It doesn't mean that you're going to be totally challenge free no matter what. Life has its ups and its downs, and each year our energy is changing a little bit. So we have that shift going on as well. So there's always going to be some challenges, and there's always going to be some really good things. But when we're aware of what those challenges are and what the energy patterns are that we're dealing with, well, then we can actually do something about it. But if we're sitting around and we don't really know, then it's much harder to figure out what we need to do. So you have both. You have a constant and a variable.
So can you look at someone's face and tell them that what kind of energy they carry?
Not by face, but I do work a lot with numbers and letters, and that usually is just my starting point. My friend always jokes with me because I was doing her personal year report one year, and I accidentally sent her the notes instead of the report. And she looked at it, she's like, this is just gibberish. I don't even know how you read this, you know? So I usually work with somebody's full legal birth name, their full current legal name, their birth date, and if they have had a name change, whether that's to marriage or just personal reasons, whatever date their name was changed. And those are really the main components I work with. And then I get that information if I'm looking at a connection with somebody else. I get it for that person that they're wanting the information on. And then just with that information, I can sit there and look and go, okay, this is what's happening. There's 3 core patterns. There's their outer world pattern. There's which is like how you and I are interacting, how you are in the business realm or with people in general. And then you have the inner world pattern, which is more your intimate relationships. So the people that you have like a love relationship with, maybe really close friends or even sometimes family. And then you have a bloodline energy, which is your family patterns and energy that you're dealing with. And then you have an overall pattern where how all of those are integrating together in things. So you actually in the outer world have a very similar pattern to some of my outer world energy and also to the life energy that I deal with. So in the outer world, you have to come across points in your life where you're going to be faced with having to choose either materialism and a very materialistic path, and that can be very tempting to you, to choose spiritualism. And this is actually a path of Christ consciousness to a certain extent, or divine alignment. And that means that sometimes when you're choosing that divine alignment, it is very, very hard. You do much better on your own a lot of times because anytime you get into a family type dynamic, you usually will become the scapegoat, for example, in that group. And there's almost always somebody who's jealous and they might have 10 times more than you, but then they want to guilt you into things for them. You tend to get taken advantage of that way. But, it's because your spirit is so strong. So, really when your challenges in the outer world, so to say, is that pattern of understanding, okay, I'm always going to be making these choices. And part of what you can do to, for example, divert some of that energy and to soften the challenges that you may have with other people is to regularly give yourself healthy indulgences. And when I say that, that's things that stimulate your physical senses. So like if you go out into nature and you actually smell that spring air coming in, like you could smell the spring rain, or you go up and you can smell the pine tree or things like that. Like I have a lot of pine trees around. So when I get tired of dealing with people, I go walk in the forest because there's so much sensory stimulation in that process, right? So things that are good for the body, massage work, body care work, those are all considered healthy indulgences. Even sometimes something like dark chocolate, it's not that I want to promote sweets, but I mean, there are antioxidant properties in that. There is a strong iron content if you're talking like 80-90% chocolate or cocoa in there. So yeah, I mean, there's things like that. And if you're giving yourself some of those regular little treats, so to say, you'll soften some of the energy you deal with others. And then you have to balance it and say, well, what am I willing to give somebody? Because yes, my soul, my spirit, it wants to balance everything and it wants to give to people because that's naturally who we are, right? But at the same time, you have to realize that you can't enable people in manipulation. And so you have to draw that line with them sometimes and go, well, I can do this for you, but I'm not going to do all this. And really weighing out, could they do this themselves? And they're just trying to, get me to do it for them? Or do they actually need help on something? So that's always some of those questions that you may want to ask when you're dealing with people and thinking about doing things. Am I close?
Absolutely. I find myself swinging and sometimes going to the spiritual side. Then I think I should focus on the material side. But then I feel, no, I should again go there. It just keeps on moving.
You have to sit back and you have to go, well, I have to cover my expenses somehow, right? I have to pay the rent. I need to have food to eat, some of the just very basic things. And you can do minimalism very easy if you want to. But at the same time, we don't have to be in that space of suffering, but it is a bit of a struggle, I think, for people like you and myself who are on that energy pattern, especially in the outer world. There is that struggle in there, because a lot of times if we do step into that soul side, we don't get the resources sometimes that we need. So we have to really look into our worth and value and realize that sometimes it is okay to receive. But our challenge a lot of times in receiving is that we've dealt with so many people that betray us through our life that it's very hard to take it because we realize there's always an attachment there. Like you're waiting for that bomb to drop that says, well, what's the catch to their help? So you become more and more independent in a sense. And yeah, it is a tough balance to find in there. And I think that's where I've kind of scaled some of the work that I do. So some of the things I put out there for free that maybe are some of the basic necessities. You may have seen some of the social media posts where I post about the month or an energy spike that's happening, or, just some daily little quotes or things like that. And it's like, okay, those are things I can share for free. Those are things that for the person who's really struggling and they don't even have that $10 or whatever to make a donation, then that will help them. That will be enough. And then the things like the personal year reports and things like that, which become much more time consuming for me. And I look at them and say they're really great to have, but they're not the core necessity necessarily. So when I look at that, then it's like, okay, that I have to charge for it because that could take me 10 or 12 hours to do one of those reports. So it's, I don't have time to just sit and do that for free.
Because if you don't charge, there will be an imbalance of energy. That is the thing.
There has to be an exchange. And I have worked out exchanges, like when I've had friends and they're like, I know they're in really tough times. I've worked with them, maybe, did some payment plans with them or whatever the case was to help them out, or said, well, I think of things of like, okay, I could do this myself, or I could let them do it. And then we now have an exchange in there. And I think that's always a good option in there. And then like books, I can only do so much with books.
I said that I am mostly interested in both realms. Sometimes I'm interested in the materialistic world and then into the spiritual realm also. Because I'm having, I'll say that I have in my fourth house Venus Ketu conjunction I have in my fourth house. So my feelings are, I move towards both the ways and I can't concentrate on one thing. Like some people are fully materialistic, okay, or they're fully spiritual, but I am into both. That's what I'm saying.
And that balance is important.
Sometimes balance is important, but sometimes you are fully into something and then you feel detached. It happens. Like you want to leave everything and go to become a saint or sage, something. That kind of feeling also comes up sometimes. Like you want to,
and it's a good checkpoint with some of our energy or people that have this same kind of code energy pattern, because if we get too much into the material, we will feel so empty inside and so depleted and just so unfulfilled. And then that brings up a lot of other things. We are in a material world. So as much as we may want to be fully in spirit, and we can be there to a certain extent, we do have physical needs that we have to take care of, basic just.
When I suddenly get pulled towards the material world, that it's also required. It's important because to survive in this world, to get any kind of enlightenment also, we can do our karma correctly and still achieve what we want. Because if we renounce everything, no one will learn anything from us.
Well, and I like to remind people there's nothing wrong with making some nice money out there. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is, where is our focus? Are we worshiping that money? Is that money our our heart and our soul, so to say, or spirit, our heart and soul. And so, again, this piece in there, resources that we need to live in this world, because our human body has to be taken care of in order to be the vehicle for the soul to be here.
I think loving wealth is very important, I feel, because if you create more and more wealth, you would be able to help others in need also. So abundance is very much necessary.
Well, here again, there's variables within that as well, but I agree that if we don't want to shut out receiving, because again, if you are walking in a soul energy, then you are going to be able to receive that energy. You can receive well, and if your soul energy is your core focus and you learn how to receive money as well, then yes, you can go out and do that humanitarian work. You can help a lot of other people in the world. So again, it's that balance of, yes, being open to receive, being willing to take it in, being willing to build the resources, and not rejecting any of that, but keeping your focus in, divine sources, they say, keeping your focus centered, soul centered.
Yes, absolutely. That's important. Because we are in a material world, we must strive, but as well, our main goal should be to attain enlightenment or be spiritually uplifted or learn a lot in the occult realm and gain a lot of experiences also and meet
Well,
divine souls.
and true abundance, when we get into it, a lot of people believe abundance is financial and material wealth, and it's actually not. It's actually more of the divine source coming through us and activating us to this sense of fulfillment, to this sense of satiation, of knowing that we have enough, we are enough, we've got enough to give and to share, even when we don't have a lot. But when we allow the true abundance to flow through us, that's when the other pieces naturally will flow to us. So the material wealth oftentimes will flow to us as a result of being abundant from within us. So you're bringing that fulfillment in, and it's kind of like when you're in true abundance, you don't have to go out and chase the money, because that starts coming to you. Whereas when you're out chasing the money, what happens, right? When you're chasing a person or something, they run away, right? Well, the same kind of thing is true a lot of times, like with money or other material resources. But when you're vibrating in that abundance energy, that true abundance energy, and that spirit, that soul is active within you, then those things naturally come to you. So I've had those experiences where I've hit financial challenges along the way. I'm going in and out of those regularly because of my own code energy patterns, and that's okay. But as a result of being in that true abundance, for example, last winter, I had a bunch of clients step forward and help me get shelter over winter, and literally people calling in from around the world to help me out. And it was such a gift and such a blessing. And so when you sit in that space, it's almost like people can't let you suffer. You have to be prepared to deal with whatever the circumstances are. You have to actively always be doing what you can to shift and change, to create, that more favorable position for yourself. Because like you say, it's like if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be there for other people. You're not going to be able to help them, whether that's healing or financial or whatever it is. If you don't take care of your own health, you're not going to be able to go out and do things. So we have to honor that. So if we're doing our pieces, if we're sitting in that abundance, and people will naturally come around, again, not because we expect it, but because we are living in a space that they want to feed and nourish that energy.
Right. I agree. So my next question is, what are some signs that a person is living in alignment with their energy code?
I think what happens for a lot of people when they're living in their energy codes, they they stop seeing everything that goes wrong as evil. They don't blame it. They just kind of go, okay, I'm being redirected here, or you have a certain amount of confidence within you to face whatever comes up. There's also a very strong level of acceptance. So we don't try to make things what they're not. We look at the reality, we face them, we don't put them off, and we deal with it along the way. We don't avoid the challenges because we know that there's a gift within those challenges somewhere. We have to be able to find it. So we will hit our points some days, even when we're very well aligned. Like I'm well aligned with where I live and a variety of other things. But so you actually come into this space of acceptance of things, and you come into this point of not running away from things because you don't like the way they look. But there is also a natural flow and a natural way of supporting you. So again, if I'm sitting in a situation and I'm in, for example, financial hardships or anything like that at a certain point, then if I'm in an area that is coded for me, if I'm in a location that is favorable for me, I will get the support from people. So for example, I will have people say, look, come in here and work. Come in here and do things. Let us help you this way. You're eligible for this. Let us gift you that. So it's actually supporting me when I'm in that favorable flow and actively working on things and strong in being able to deal with the energy currents. And then if I was not in a favorable area, it would be like my car would be falling apart. I would be scrambling for anything. I would lose whatever little resources I had, and I would be pulled into more of a deprivation or a victim mindset. Again, depending on where it was and what the patterns were for me in those areas. So if I'm not working with things, there's oftentimes I see a lot of negativity that comes up. When somebody is working really well with the codes, they're like, okay, I don't like this energy pattern because it's really heavy, or it's, it means certain things, but you know what? I'm just going to face it and I'm going to deal with it. And then when they do, they find the blessings. The blessings start to unfold for them in return for that. So yeah, acceptance is a really huge piece that I see in that. Just facing things directly, not running from them, and still finding joy no matter what the situations are, and being able to transmute things very, very much easier, getting the support behind you in challenging times.
Okay, my next question is, can you tell if someone will be successful in career, relationships, or health based on their energy code?
Yeah, definitely. There's a good chance that we can look at those things. And again, I would have to look at theirs and somebody else's as far as relationship to see what the dynamics would be between those two particular people, if it would be favorable or not. I've certainly done that for a lot of people. Whatever life codes we are born into, most people are going to have some challenges. Some people will have a lot of good flow. And it's very interesting because the people that I see that have a lot of natural success and wealth flow and things like that, like the smallest things can throw them completely off course. Whereas somebody that's born into a lot of challenges, there's almost a lot more resilience there. So they tend to be able to deal with a lot more challenging things along the way. So again, like with you could go either way, but chances are a regular job, a regular corporation, is it going to work for you? You have to have some sort of spiritual foundation or moving towards something positive in the world. That's where you would need to probably build your success from, just from that one piece of what I know of you. In there. So yeah, there's these dynamics where I can pretty much tell if somebody's going to have certain challenges in certain areas or not. Like I do not have good relationship energy, for example, and that is, and I see it, I see it. There's like almost victim abuser patterns in there. And I've drawn in a lot of unfavorable partners along the way. And it just, I see where that repeats. And again, you learn how to transform some of that and bring some of that in. And with some of the changes I've made along the way, I actually have been able to boost that away from some of the victim energy and be able to bring in more unconditional love through people who are close to me in my life. So I think that there's always those patterns, but yes, absolutely. When I look at somebody's life codes and I look at what they're born into, what they're working with, I can definitely tell when I look at where they're living and the different energy influences that impact them. Yeah, I can definitely tell whether things are going to flow for them or not.
So, do you think suffering is due to past life karma?
I think that there are a variety of pieces with suffering. There can be past life things there. There can be things that we unknowingly create in our current existence as well. I mean, we think of things, for example, as a child, right? A lot of children tend to run more towards materialism patterns, more towards, when you're a young teen, what are you looking for? You're looking for that person that looks really good, right? And you're really attracted to them, but you're not always tuned into love, actual real relationship type love, lifetime type love, things like that we can self-sabotage. And then we have to clear that. So like, if the soul before me was very materialistic at certain points, I have to offset that with the polar opposite energy to a certain extent to balance it out. If I was uncaring in certain situations, I have to become caring in certain situations in order to balance that energy out. So I do believe we can always balance it, but I don't believe that we are a victim to past lives or to current karma that we create for ourselves. I think also, again, sometimes a soul comes in and they need to be present in a certain place or a certain family unit or to connect with a certain person in this existence. And in order to do that, they may have to be born into challenges. But the key is to realize that even if you're born into a challenging pattern, there's always ways to work with it and not be a victim to those patterns. At least that's what I believe. And I feel that, again, you can take that, like a friend of mine is born into a lot of lies and deception energy. Well, she felt like that was a curse all of her life. Like, man, what did I do in a past life to have to deal with all of these abusive people and things like that in my life? And I finally told her one day, I said, this isn't your curse, this is your blessing. And I said, come to realize this, because you may deal with all these liars and manipulators and deceptive people in your life, and she's given me permission to say things, even though I'm not saying her name. She's given me permission to talk about these things. But you know what? You have a blessing that nothing can hide from you. So the truth can never hide. And wherever you are, it's going to emerge. So you may not like dealing with these types of people, but nobody can get away with anything around you.
It will come
And
back.
as long as you're standing in truth and integrity, they can't get away with anything.
So, a person who has had failed relationships all the time, do you think that person will be able to manifest a true soulmate in the future?
Well, absolutely. And part of that is depending on the code energy patterns that the other person is carrying. So again, for example, if I'm connecting up with people and I don't have a favorable connection in that intimate inner relationship area of my life, then I'm going to probably be in that sort of abuse pattern and draw abusive and manipulative people into me. But if I connect with somebody that I do have a favorable connection with in that area of my life and overall, then we actually can unfold a very positive relationship with each other. So does that mean that there's not going to be any challenges? No, I mean, we're always going to have some challenges in this dimension. The difference is that we will be able to move through them, or we will come to meet them through, say, unconditional love instead of anger and hate and aggression.
So I have a question like some people pretend to be very good for a long time, but then they show their true colors. What makes them, what makes it happen? Why do they change? Why do people change so easily? Like somebody will make fake promises to you that they love you and all that. It will carry for years, like 1, 2 years or 5 years, whatever. And then they show their true colors. They become a person who's a cheater, a manipulator, and they might be using you financially, whatever. Why does that happen? Why do people make fake promises, and how are they able to hide their true colors?
Well, again, I would be looking at what changes have happened in their life in that time. If it's connected to a marriage, then did that person change their name and thus change their vibration and become somebody different? Did they move during that time? And therefore, they're working under maybe influences like before, maybe they had favorable influences where they were living. And then when they moved into unfavorable influences that brought
No,
in
I'm
lies
asking
and
that
deception.
suppose they were in unfavorable situations before and they moved to the favorable situation and then they changed.
And then they change after they move into the favorable. So this then again, I'd have to really look at that person's energy to understand it. But just as I was mentioning with you, a lot of times energy patterns are going to have two sides to them. They're going to have the divine side to them, and they're going to have the materialistic side to them. And so if that person, for example, is in the distortions of their energy, they might have some material wealth or things coming through, but somewhere in their energy patterns, they may still be those people who use other people. They may still be working in the distortions of their pattern, and because they're chasing the materialism instead of something else. And this is one of the things, for example, with our pattern, because while we are carrying that pattern, we can see it come out in other people around us as well. So, we're almost like that needle point, that acupuncture point in somebody. And so, when they're around us for a certain period of time, we're going to find out whether they're really in spirit or whether they're really in materialism, because our energy is going to bring that choice out too in them to a certain extent. And so, yeah, there can be a variety of reasons, but it can be that, I always say really hard times and really good times are the best way to know who somebody really is. Because really hard times, you have a choice, right? You can lay down and you can be a victim, or you can turn things around and become very compassionate and really get your heart wide open in those situations. Likewise, in really good times, we learn whether somebody truly is compassionate when good fortune blesses them, or whether they're really much more materialistically based and much more chasing the material things in life. So always the really good things and the really challenging things are probably the best way for us to judge it. Whereas a lot of people maybe are sitting in the middle, or they think that, okay, I'm sitting in the spiritual space, but then when things start to flow in, they're actually not in that space. So it's a good reflection that says, no, you're not actually in that space. Because if something material can change you, you weren't in spirit to start with.
So people can wear a mask for a very long time also, even if they are not married, they're in a relationship also. And they pretend to be spiritual. Some people do that intentionally. They pretend that they are a very spiritual person.
So you have a lot of people out there that are like in the false prophets, false teachers, false just spiritual practitioners, false
Yes.
healers even.
Hmm.
And they present a really good image. They're good at presenting that image like an actor or an actress, and they're lost in that image. They're lost in the illusion of it instead of actually being in it. And yes, so it's very easy to get swept into that image. Think of all the really big name spiritual people out there, right? They can present a really good image, but when you get down and start looking at a lot of those people, they're not always walking their talk. They don't actually, a lot of times, have experiences of suffering and hardship, but they're trying to tell you how to get out of it, you know? That's like somebody who is, 400 pounds telling you how to be healthy, and not that they couldn't just have physical issues that make them that way, but, if they're 400 pounds and they're eating nothing but junk food and sugar and fried foods and not eating healthy at all, is that really the person you want to do it? But then, they use the camera angles just so they don't look like 400 pounds, right? They only look like they're 200 pounds and much more muscular than, that maybe they use some AI or whatever, but then it's like over time you start to realize like, this person isn't doing what they're telling me to do, and yeah, it's very eye-opening. I think this is one of the big things. You talk about that growth. You asked me about that earlier, how somebody's living in something. They allow their illusions to be broken about everything. Whether that's about being a celebrity or who makes the bestseller list or, any of these things. And you start to realize, oh, this isn't always about how good I am at something. This is about how much money I've spent. And that's where a lot of these images, they get money behind them. And yes, it's very easy to fall for them, and people can present great images for a while. And that's why sometimes it's really great to kind of test the waters and say, well, how do they feel if we don't spend any money at all on a date, for example, and we do something that's totally free and we just kind of hang in that space for a while? Are they really okay with that? Or are they, oh, I wish that we had this really fancy restaurant? Or are they saying, I wish we could go take a vacation in this place that's $300 a night or $500 a night in this luxury resort? Again, it's like, where's their focus? And then, other times seeing, okay, maybe you do something really super nice one time and you do something that's more extravagant and more expensive, right? And then you see, are they lost in that? Are they just like starstruck in that space? Or are they sitting there going, you know what? This is really, really nice. But what would have been really cool is maybe we could have done something that was $100 a night instead of $300. And then we could have taken the other $200 and gone and just paid it forward and gifted it out to people that needed it. So this mindset becomes very, very different. And that's where you can kind of, I think, test the waters in some of those things. But yeah.
Absolutely. In relationships, I have seen that sometimes one person is giving a lot financially, emotionally, and the other one is taking it for granted or not taking it seriously, and also engaging in acts like cheating and all that, manipulation. So I feel that one person is having a lot of power, the one who is taking a lot, and the person who's giving is less powerful.
Well, consider this for a moment, though, right? The person who is taking a lot, who's not appreciative, oftentimes there's a lot of insecurities in there, and they're actually feeling or believing that the person with all the money has more power because they're dependent on that person. And so it's interesting how from each side, the other one can oftentimes see the other person as being the one with the power.
But it is opposite nowadays. Sometimes I have seen people, they'll be taking everything from you and you will be giving them everything selflessly. Okay, and they will be taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
And will be with multiple people also. So that's disheartening. That's what I was saying.
It is very disheartening. And there's two big things in there. One, we have to learn to set our boundaries and create exchanges with people and say, hey, I'm cool about maybe paying all the bills for you because I'm bringing in the money and I can afford to do that. But this is what I'm going to need from you back. And if they have no exchange, if they don't feel any value or purpose in the relationship, and that's what the exchange does, is it creates value and purpose. If they don't feel any value or purpose or have any exchange in the relationship, then then you end up in this dynamic, and then it ends up depleting the person that is giving everything. And again, testing the waters a little at a time with people, because can they truly be grateful for something? Or are they always grateful when they get it and when they don't get it? So that they're not taking it for granted, not assuming that you're always going to do that. I've had a lot of people step up and help me this past winter, and I've had people go way above and beyond what they ever needed to do. And, it's like my gratitude is always there. I'm like, I don't even have words to express the gratitude. Now I have done a couple of things for them, and I realize it's nowhere near equal to what they've given me. And again, there's not a problem with one person, say contributing the financial aspect, but then the other person needs to pick up and maybe do house things or stuff like that. So, I went above and beyond maybe some of the things I was asked in the exchange that I had with people. And so I kind of believe, in that aspect, under promise, over deliver. But again, there's got to be a certain amount of gratitude. And on one hand, we want to give for the pure sake of giving, but we also have to know who are we giving to. And sometimes you have to test the waters a little bit and see, are they just taking advantage because they want a free ride? And they just don't really want to do anything, and they want to be lazy and all of that. Or do they have a true gratitude? And if there's a true gratitude there, they're going to be going, what can I do to support you? Hey, let me take care of the yard work. Hey, let me take care of the house. Hey, let me cook the meals. And then you don't have to worry with, so that they're contributing. And again, I find that if somebody is giving any kind of exchange and appreciation in there, that they are doing willingly and joyfully, then they are going to have a sense of value and purpose. And that is so critical, because if they're not exchanging anything, they don't have that. And the less value and worth that they feel, the more insecure they get. The more insecure they get, the more powerless they feel. The more powerless they feel, the more of a drain they become in things. So it's just a cascading set of events. And again, we have to have those two things. The person who is able to do, they have to give in moderation, and they have to be willing to draw the line to a certain extent in there, so that they're not being taken advantage of.
Absolutely correct. I completely agree with you. In my perspective, I believe love should last for a lifetime, and a relationship should be based on commitment and not for like temporary things or anything. And whenever also coming to success, it should give value to people, to others, to animals, to humans, everyone. So everyone should be benefited in some way. This is what I believe.
With the unconditional love energy, I agree with you. That's for life. They're going to celebrate your successes, and they're not going to run when times get a little bit hard or uncomfortable, or anything like that. When a little bit of challenge, they're going to be willing to talk things through with you. They're going to work with you. There's going to be that communication there. With the successes, again, you're right. What are you doing with those successes? What is happening with those? And I think that is so important. It's again, we oftentimes measure success by material metrics, wealth, money, possessions, things like that. But we forget about maybe some of the daily successes that we make. And that's what we need to tune into. We need to be able to tune into those smaller successes if we're going to draw on the bigger successes along the way. And you start to realize, you know what? Maybe I didn't get this 6-figure job or whatever, but you know what? I literally saved somebody's life today. That was a success. And we forget to count the non-financial, the non-material successes a lot of times. And we need to count those.
Do people attract certain life experiences because of their unique energy patterns?
I would say yes, absolutely. Because we have that energy that we're existing in, and then they will certainly attract experiences in life that are going to help them out, help them out or challenge them, either way, depending on where they're at, where they're living in their energy patterns. So again, if they're living, for example, in truth and integrity, then they're going to have a lot better chance of drawing in people with truth and integrity than if they're living in the lies and deception. That's kind of that law of attraction principle to a certain extent in there. But again, with our code patterns, we're naturally going to draw to certain things. So there's people with code patterns that very much favor the arts. And I almost always find that they're in the arts in some way, whether that's music or dance or cooking or, writing or whatever that is, that components are always there for them. People who are free-spirited energy, who have that adventurous sort of energy, a lot of those people in that code pattern or that energetic pattern, they have got to travel a lot. They have got to go out and explore the world and always be learning new things and be very connected to their environment and, what's around them. They don't work well on schedules, things like that. And again, as we know these things, we can harness this energy and go, why have I been trying to work a 9-to-5 job when I don't do well with schedules? It's like, it doesn't work. Because they're always looking for the next thing. So absolutely, we're going to draw in different experiences based on that. And whether we are working with our natural energetic against them also is going to determine the types of experiences we're drawing in. If we're working against them, we're going to draw in the hardships of those.
My next question is, how can understanding energy codes help people make better life decisions?
Well, here again, I think this comes back to the foresight piece. And with the foresight piece, it's because when you understand what you're dealing with, then you can act with greater wisdom. When you act with greater wisdom, you're going to make better choices in life. So if I have that understanding that I might draw in abusive partners in my life, then I need to be a lot more discretion and understand what the early signs are of abusive people, right? I need to learn to set my parameters much earlier and go, okay, yeah, I'm not going to spend 2 years giving you the benefit of the doubt when I can already see where this is going. I have to hold out for certain qualities. And that can be frustrating at times, sometimes because you think, is it ever going to come? Is it ever going to happen in my life? But then, you sit back and you go, okay, yeah, it will come, but I have to hold the boundaries for it to come in. If I'm always settling for something that is not ideal for me, is not a good thing for me, then I'm not going to get to that better thing, so to say. I have to be willing to say no to what doesn't serve me in order to get to what will serve me. And I think that's it. It's all about the foresight. It comes back to the same thing. Even in the code patterns, there's times that it says, hey, storms could come out of nowhere. So it's like, okay, well, let me take a layer of clothes. Like I'll throw a jacket in, I'll throw some extra water in the car. If I see a storm coming in, I'll make sure I'm home before it's supposed to start. These basic things that are just wise decisions to make, instead of saying, if you didn't know that storm could turn worse, then it's like, okay, you could get caught in a bad situation. Or if you deny the information you're being given to work with, then you're gonna draw in the consequences of that. So I think absolutely it helps us to realize, because it helps us realize where we tend to give into things we shouldn't, where our strengths are, and that just overall is going to continue to help us make better decisions.
Great. My next question is, if two people go through the same event, why might one succeed while the other struggles? Is this because of their energy?
Well, many times it is because of the energy. It's just like two people living in the same house. If you have two people that go to the same event, one person may have very favorable energy where that event is located, and another person may have very unfavorable or challenging energy there. And so they're going to experience some of those challenges. Again, now maybe they have the power to transform some of that, or even certain days of the week may be more favorable for one person and not favorable for the other person. The basic day energy is the same, but for one person, it drains their energy out. For another person, it boosts their confidence and their charge. So that makes them more, able to receive and absorb whatever's happening in that event. So whereas the person that's drained out that day, it's going to be harder for them to absorb what's happening in that event or to be more presentable to people in that event. So yes, absolutely. This again, it's that same aspect. It depends on how our energy patterns are interacting with that place, with that event that we're at.
Suppose there are two people. One gets success easily and another has to put more effort. Why is that a case?
Well, I think a lot of times this does come to the energy patterns. Their life patterns has a lot to do with that. Whether something flows easily for somebody or doesn't. Again, I mentioned that earlier. I find a lot of people that have like those really strong success energy patterns and they have like no real challenging energy patterns. It doesn't mean that they don't ever hit a little bump, but like the smallest thing is like the biggest disaster to them because they're not used to it. They're so used to everything being in flow and going easily for them and having that natural propensity to receive success. And then you have other people, maybe somewhat like yourself or, experiences I've had in my life where it's like, man, as soon as something flows, bam, there it's gone again, and it's like, oh, I went off this roller coaster. But at the same time, here again, it's, because we tend to have more appreciation when we do get things because we have to work that much harder for it. And again, location is going to be a bit, even if somebody has good life code patterns, if they're sitting in a location, living in a location that has these unfavorable patterns for them, they could constantly be getting blocked in that energy. So yeah, it definitely has an influence in there. On us, those energetic patterns. And I think that's oftentimes does what influence it a lot. That's what I've noticed anyways in my work. And sometimes when I get into things with people, when I'm working with them as a client and they're like, oh my God, this just makes so much sense. And why didn't I have this 20 years ago? Or why didn't somebody teach me this a long time ago? And, it does, it just helps. And then as you start to learn more again about yourself, your energy patterns, your natural flow with things, then, you learn how to work with them. And sometimes we're in a place and we have to be in that place, even if it's not favorable for whatever reason. Like I know people, it's like, well, I have to be here because of family or because, my children's father is here and we have shared custody. And so, we can't be flying the kids across country every weekend or something like that, right? So sometimes that's interfering with things in there. But yeah, so I mean, again, these core pieces, which definitely shows, yeah, there's going to be people that naturally have that flow and people that don't. But it doesn't mean the people that don't always have a bad life, because sometimes they have really great, fulfilling lives. And it's all depending on what they do and what they bring out. That's where our actions make a difference.
So, can our efforts speed the success? Can we become successful if we keep on putting efforts?
We can. And for some people, depending on their patterns, it may take a lot more effort than somebody else. And here again, when we start to learn more about how we function to be able to create the success, then we have a better idea of how to harness it. And, sometimes that success isn't all about the money in there. It's always nice to have that be a result of things, but sometimes the other successes are really big and important too. And it's just like learning, are you built to be a CEO of a company that is international and that is servicing countries all around the world? or are you meant to be a background person? And that you are less being in that background or that support position than the CEO, because the CEO doesn't get very far without those support people, right? And so they're really equally important, even though they're in different roles. And I think that's one of the societal things we have to break, that programming that one thing is less than another. When we step into the positions and the roles that we have natural energetic alignments for, we're going to thrive. And if we're trying to force ourselves to be in positions that we're not really built for, like, if you're an introvert and you force yourself to be in an extroverted position, that's not going to work well. And likewise, if you take somebody who's got to have a lot of people contact and you drop them in isolation someplace, they're not going to do very well. And they're going to be going stir crazy after a day, or 2 days. They just are not going to be able to be still, because that's not who they are. So it's all about harnessing the energy as we are. And again, the more we learn that and we realize, okay, maybe I'm more of a background person, or maybe, marketing isn't my skill, so I need to connect with marketing people who are really good at that. And then, that's it. Or maybe it's not so much about promoting me, but I'm really great at promoting other people. And so again, I might be the coach's coach, for example, which I am. There's a lot of coaches that tap into my work and then draw on it. And so I end up being that, that person. So I'm actually honoring more of my role of sort of being in the background, but not avoiding everything at the same time. When I need to step out there and speak and present, I can do that. But would I want to be there 24/7? Probably not, honestly, because I know that's not my forte. I can go up and give a great presentation, but then I need my week to decompress that.
My next question is, can things like environment or relationships affect a person's energy code?
Relationship with somebody.
Environment, where they're born, and the relationships they have, their parents, their family, their partners.
Yeah, the relationship that somebody has with their partner is going to have a big impact in their life.
And the place where they are born, with their parents, siblings, and all those people around them, will they impact their energy code?
It does, because we have an energetic connection with all of the people around us, whether that's family or an intimate relationship. I don't work a lot off of location. That's not actually something that I have to have. Birth location, I should say, where somebody's born. I actually don't have to have that information to do my work, which is great for people who have been adopted or been through other systems where they don't have that information. As long as I have the dates, that helps. And, some of it I don't even have to have the date to work with. But when it comes to family, yes, it definitely shows, because how our energy is interacting with that person's energy is going to impact the experiences that come out in the family dynamics. It will designate whether there's sibling rivalry that's going to be there or not in those energetic patterns. And anytime we are, again, intimately connected or in a relationship with somebody, that's going to bring out more energy patterns that are going to become present in our life, for better or for worse. And again, that other person might even have good energy patterns. But the question is, are they standing in the gifts of those patterns, or are they standing in the distortions of those patterns? And that influences a lot what direction they go to. And sometimes that is an age thing, because as we know, sometimes what we're chasing in our 20s is not the same thing we're chasing in our 50s. There's different values, different growth that happens along the way. So yeah, there's a lot of variables, and that can even be why we may not work with one person at one point in our life, but then depending on, again, where we're living, any of the growth that they've made, that can sometimes show which side of the energy patterns will come out. So, you could have somebody, for example, on an energy pattern that is lies, deception, and manipulation. Well, at one point in their life, that's where they may be in those patterns. They may be living a lot in that. And then at another point, they may step into the truth. So even though they have that pattern there, they have shifted and chosen to move out of the lies and deception and stand in the truth part. So then we get a whole different component to them. But absolutely, anybody that we have a lot of contact with is going to have an impact on us as well.
Do names, birth dates, or personal habits influence someone's path in life?
I absolutely believe that they do. I find that that's very much the case, because the names carry an energetic vibration. Everything were named, and even different shifts in the lettering. Like you could have, three people named Crystal, and one of them spells their name with a K, and one spells it with a C, and one person uses a Y, and one person uses a different letter, and one person has an A in there, and one person has an E in there. Well, those flows of currents are completely different, and they will definitely influence whether somebody tends to be a more aggressive energy versus somebody who has more luck energy, versus somebody who's carrying more wisdom and healing energy versus somebody who might have trust issues. So even again, this is where things like other modalities say, well, everybody born under this name has the same influence. But when I look at the code energy, that's not the case. They actually have their own flow, their own way of moving through life. So the name actually can also show me a lot about the flow, where somebody starts from when they start a cycle or a process or something that they're working, a project in their life, and where they end up in things. And so all of those things can have an influence. You have a lot of heart-centered energy when you start things. You have a lot of healing energy that comes out when you're working from the heart. You have a lot of wisdom that comes out of you, and you naturally connect with a lot of wisdom. So, there's all these pieces, and then, up in the space of seeing what you can and cannot trust in things when it connects with, for example, the outer world. And so you learn from that, and then you come back into heart and go, okay, we're going to start this again. And so the birth dates also can have an impact, because the birth dates oftentimes can tell us things like they will connect in with what our generational groupings are, our starseed groupings, things like that. So that sometimes can help us to understand a little bit more about, what different groupings we come from in there.
Absolutely, I agree. So my next question is, have you seen someone completely change their life by working with their energy codes?
I definitely have. I mean, I know my life has shifted and changed, and it's an ongoing process. I mean, we're always learning, no matter how much knowledge and wisdom you have. It's an ongoing process of working with everything. I've seen my life go from, different challenges. Again, whether that is financial, relationships, family, or whatever. The more I've worked with my codes, my energetic patterns, the more I have been able to release things like trauma, release different experiences, handle things better. Again, getting the support by living in an area where I'm energetically supported. I have things that come through for me, as when I've lived in places where I was not energetically supported. Life was very, very hard. There were hard crashes and a lot of pain involved. And I've also watched clients that I've worked with where they've shifted from being in this heavy victim energy that everything was wrong, everything was evil, everything that was a problem was somebody else's doing, or things like that. And, some of it was true, some of it wasn't true. But when they shifted and they moved out of that victim energy and they moved to another location, then they became almost a whole different person. And people were commenting like, wow, you're so different than you used to be, or you've got confidence now and you're actually staying in positive energy instead of all of this negative energy. Because a lot of times when we're in those heavy energy patterns or those negative energy patterns, we don't even see it ourselves. We're just lost in the misery and the hardships and stuff like that. And then when you shift out of it, it's like, wow, I didn't know life could be like this. Like, I have people that, when they're in locations that are unfavorable for them, and they literally have like physical illness comes on, they've had to go to emergency clinics, things like that to deal with things. And then they go to another location that they're favorably energetically aligned with, and then it's like, I have no health problems here. And it's like, yeah, because your energy is supporting you. The tricky thing with locations is a lot of people have their personal desire of where they want to be. And so like, it's like, well, I want to be by the ocean, or I want to be in the mountains, or whatever. And your codes are not necessarily going to put you where you want to be. And some of the places that are going to be energetically aligned for somebody may not be where they really want to live. And that's the challenging part. But sometimes when I can get people to make those shifts, and they do choose to make them, and they do start to see the differences, they realize and they go, man, 6 or 7 years ago, I never would have seen myself living in some small town, in the South, versus living up in near the New England area in the United States. It wouldn't have been the place I would have consciously picked. But as they've lived there longer and longer, they're like, but I'm seeing all of these blessings that are coming forward. See how confidence now. I see how I face things. And yes, there may have been some sacrifices that had to be made in that process, things that had to be let go of in the process of doing that. But who they are as a person today is incredibly wonderful and different than where they used to be. I mean, the growth has been leaps and bounds.
So my next question is, do dreams contain hidden messages about a person's life journey?
So when we get to dreams, this is very interesting to me, actually, because I dream and I journey a lot in the dream state. I astral travel a lot. And so I'm off like doing things when my body is resting and dreaming. And what I found actually a lot recently, particularly over the last year, is that the things I'm experiencing in my dreams are actually lining up with the code energy. And so they're actually kind of playing off of each other, which is quite interesting. I think that dreams are such a wonderful tool to understand things that we wouldn't necessarily see in our conscious waking living space. And so they can kind of help us to get information that we wouldn't see otherwise, and help us to unfold some more hidden pieces. And when I see them line up with the codes, it's like they're refining each other. It's like the code energy is explaining more about what my dream was about. And then my dream is like, oh, okay, it's also refining and helping me specify a little bit more which aspects within the codes there are. So, yeah.
So my next question is, how can someone tell the difference between a regular dream and one with deep meaning?
Regular dreams, one of the aspects is that there's a sense of things not being realistic. There's certain components that maybe shift and transform while you're in the dream itself. So like 1 second you're in a forested area and the next second you're in a city area. So you're not, it shifts. It like literally shifts, but you haven't changed the space that you're in. That's one aspect that's more of a dream than, a reality or a off-world experience or something like that. When we go into the really deep dreamings, when we go into the dream states that oftentimes are out-of-body experiences, or tapping into parallel or other experiences and existences, that is I shouldn't say paralleling, but that has a real life component. Like everything happens the way it does in real life here. So there's, there might be slight changes, like, the color of your house is different, or you might be at a different point in the timeline or something like that. People might be a little bit different, but everything happens in a realistic way. So for me, that's kind of how I distinguish the two.
What are some dream symbols that people should pay attention to?
I think with dream symbols in there that that can really vary. And a lot of times, again, I will kind of run it against what is happening in the codes and what that's bringing up. But a lot of times we will remember the most critical pieces for us to remember. So a lot of times that may be connected to people, that may be connected to something that made us feel safe or scared in the dream. And I think our feelings, our emotions, our perceptions of the experience that we had in the dream state. So any of those symbolism, I get a lot of animal symbolism happening. So, for example, I get a lot of connection with cats, or maybe I have certain energetic totem animals, for example. So if they're showing up in my dream journeys, then that's always a significant piece for me. Cats usually are a symbol of protection for me in some ways. They're helping to guide or protect me a lot of times when I'm in an out-of-body experience, and they'll show up regularly in there. So they're kind of like guides in those states. But then I'll have other animals, maybe like or something like that, or an owl or something like that, and that are really giving me messages to say, I want you to stay alert. When you come back and awake, I want you to stay alert to the signs you see throughout your day or the intuitive messages you're getting. So yeah, I think for each person that could be a little bit different, but for me, it's, do you see totem animals, who your people are? Is there a connection to a place that has had a major impact in your life? So like a lot of people might go back and find themselves in a place that they lived in their childhood, for example.
Why do some people have recurring dreams? Do they mean something deeper?
I think recurring dreams, usually it's because there is a point within them that we need to get. It's like a lesson, and it keeps coming up because it's telling us you need to pay attention to this. So it comes up over and over and over again until we start to go, you know what? I've seen this pattern in my dreams for like the last 3 nights or the last week or whatever the time frame is. And it seems like I'm always dealing with the same thing in the dream, or I'm always dealing with the same type of setting or the same type of people. And so it's showing there's an importance in that whatever that recurring theme is. There's something that we need to take a closer look at in our waking state.
Is there a way to ask for guidance through dreams and actually get answers?
I feel like there is. I think I like to use dreams in a way sometimes, or night journeys, to maybe resolve something that I'm just feeling like I'm not seeing or I'm not getting. And before I lay down at night, I will I will ask to be shown, can you give me guidance on this? Asking divine source, can you give me guidance on this? Can you help me to see what I'm missing? That sort of thing. And so absolutely, I believe we can put that out there, and then we can get that information back in the dreams. And I find that if I don't try to get up right away, and I just kind of lay in bed a little bit and I let myself stay with the aspect of the dream, and I try to kind of do like a little reflection process of what did I just experience, that it actually holds the dream to stick with me long enough that I can journal it out in there. So that helps me too. when I do that. And I think the journaling is a good thing if somebody has the time to do it. But it's, for me, I've got to do it like first thing, upon waking almost, because once you start to get busy, your mind loses that information.
Do nightmares mean someone's energy is out of balance, or is there another reason for them?
I can speak more from my own experiences. There's a couple of reasons for nightmares. One, they can be an energetic attack. If somebody's sometimes going through a big growth period, that polarity energy maybe is wanting to block them, make them afraid, hold them back in some way. I don't like to reside in that fear component of it myself personally. The other reason that we might have nightmares is because we might be headed down a path or opening portals in some way that is inviting in energy that can come in and influence maybe our mind or our thinking, because our mind is vulnerable in that sleep state a lot of times. So one of the things that I noticed, and it was something that led me to give up alcohol completely years ago. Because I used to be one of those people, well, what's a glass of wine on the weekends, but I don't touch anything. I don't even touch alcohol and flavorings in food anymore. Because I realized that what that was doing was, even though we consider it maybe pretty harmless, especially when you're younger, you consider, oh, it's just a glass of wine, it's just a beer or whatever. But it actually was opening up energetic portals that were drawing me into darker spaces when I would lay down to sleep at night. So that can be a reason for the so-called nightmare. And then I find that a lot of times, though, there's actually a more physical reason for it. And it has to do with our digestive processes, eating too late at night, maybe eating the wrong types of food before going to bed. So like if you eat something full of high sugar, or again, if you drinking right before going to bed or something, that a lot of times that can pull us into nightmare energy instead of going to more of a dream state, because your body's trying to digest things. And so the physical body, when it's trying to make that digestion, it can't digest very well. So it manifests through nightmares a lot of times. Americans probably have more trouble than that than other people in other countries. But
So my next question is, some people don't remember their dreams. Does that mean they are missing out on important messages?
No, it doesn't necessarily. Sometimes that we're just going in and getting that experience, and that information may be needed later. So it needed to just come into our mind, but it may not be something that we need right now. I actually find that when I don't remember dreams very well, now, of course, everybody's different depending on where they're at in their process and all of that. But I find a lot of times when I don't remember my dreams, they actually turn into a deja vu experience. So in other words, maybe 6 months down the line or a year down the line, I will experience that dream in real life. So it's kind of like it's planting a seed almost to prepare me that something's coming on a subconscious level. And then when I get into the experience, it's like, I've been through this. I had a dream about this. And I'm actually aware that there's a connection there. And I may not remember everything from the dream, but it may guide me to go in a certain direction, because I have that deja vu happening in there. So that's the way it works for me. But I think I'd never worry about it. If you're not remembering a dream, don't freak out. Don't be stressed over it. Even if you wanted to remember it, it's probably still there ruminating in your subconscious somewhere. And it will come out when it's needed, as far as the information goes.
Yes. Have you ever seen a dream completely change someone's understanding of their life?
I think so. And I think some of the cool things sometimes about dreams is that we get to be an observer. we get to see things that maybe we don't see when we're actually doing them in this existence. We might see a different side of ourselves that we like in that dream. We might connect with an energy that really touches our heart and that really wants us, reminds us maybe something that's important. We might see something that even scares us, like in a nightmare. There might be a component there that scares us. And we think, wow, I don't want to go down that path. And so we become automatically more conscious then of saying, yeah, I'm not going to put my energy into these types of things. And so absolutely, I think that they can be very transforming for a person by bringing that awareness to us or just connecting us with something that says, yeah, this felt really good in the dream. And I think I want to do something that nourishes my health more, or I want to do something that gives me more freedom to travel more, or whatever the case is for that person. So definitely they can wake us up quite a bit.
So I have a question like when you were astral projecting, did you meet anyone in the astral realm?
I always meet people in the astral realm. I feel like I have a lot of nights where I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I've actually had any rest. I've been really busy all night. And it's true. I think definitely we can connect with people. And sometimes in that astral realm, it gives us a chance to see whether maybe somebody is shifting or changing that maybe we don't have contact with anymore. Sometimes we can get a pure vibe on them. Sometimes we can get a distorted vibe on them too. But I find too that when we do interact with people, it can also be an opportunity. So, maybe you part ways with somebody and maybe there were things that weren't said, but it might be fairly complete in this existence and you're not going to reconnect with them again. So you may have a connection in that astral realm with them that clears the energy, gets that conversation out in a way that is, you're in a space where you're free from the distortions and the influences of the third dimensional energy or the denser energy. So it's not getting that interference as much. So I think sometimes we can cleanse certain energy that way. We can have conversations that we can't have in this existence. So definitely there's connections that can happen. And I frequently connecting with people.
So what's one simple way someone can start using dreams and energy codes to improve their life?
I think kind of like the way I mentioned before. Again, a lot of it is about foresight. A lot of it is about taking the wisdom and saying, here, I'm being given this piece of wisdom. What am I going to do with it? Because if you don't take information and put it into action, you're not going to create anything. This is part of many esoteric foundations. You get a dream, a vision, an idea, whatever it is, a concept, but you have to take action on that concept if you want anything to manifest. That's basic manifestation principles. So I think that's the key thing is you've got to be willing to take action on it. You've got to be taking that information and say, how can I incorporate this wisdom?
So my last question, where can people find you, learn more about your work, or book a session with you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on a few of the alternative platforms out there. And they can do that. They can go directly to my website, which is compassioncodes.com. And they can check out the information that's on there. They can send me a message through the website. They can send an email directly to me, which is my initials, Jessie on Nichols George. I go by on. So if you're looking at Jessie and I respond to you as on, that's because I'm on. And it is because that's what I go by. and it's jang@compassioncodes.com is my email. So people are welcome to reach out. And again, they can check out my book. I actually just, this is the Code Journey, and I just reduced the ebook version. But I like to warn people, because I do reductions throughout the year until I release the next edition on it. A lot of information to have on an ebook version, but I do have people that like that because they like to have the information with them. In addition to the paperback is on Amazon. The ebook version is on Smashwords. So it's not hard to find on my website. If somebody goes into compassioncodes.com, they click on the goods tab, they'll see the Code Journey. They can click on that. And then that has links directly to the purchase pages in there. So that can be very helpful just to go to. And I've got videos on my website that people can watch. Of course, my YouTube channel. I've got a regular YouTube channel of the kind of self-help, spiritual work, things like that. And then I've got it's semi-geopolitical, at least I deal with insights on world events and things like that, which is called Connecting Codes. So that's out there, and they can also reach out to me through those platforms. And I'm on YouTube, BitChute, and Brighteon for video channels.
Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for this. This has been incredible. I love it. I love what you're doing, and I just wish you an incredible amount of success.
Thank you so much. I wish the same for you too. Namaste.
Namaste.